Well, hello everyone. Thanks for joining us today for this latest webinar of museumexpert.org. As some of you or all of you may know, we are in a process of thinking together about how to create a human-centered workplace. We have started that last year with different types of webinars and surveys and other types of initiatives. And now we are ready to move to more concrete examples of how we can actually have that conversation going and come out with some concrete ideas on how to build a human-centered workplace. And we have chosen to start with the idea of the DEAI because for us it's a real essential part of building a human-centered workplace. We have known for the last years how strongly many museums have been trying to respond to the need of diversity and inclusion, sometimes with success and sometimes with less success. Today we will bring three examples to you of what is actually happening to people who actually are on the floor doing this and trying to make progress on this idea. So I am not going to talk very much longer. We have panelists from Europe and Chabot and from Detroit. And we're going to start with hearing and listening to our colleagues from Europe. And I'm intrigued if there are maybe potential like other ideas or differences that may be concrete between Europe and the US, knowing that for us here, and that will be not a surprise, in the very near future, the idea itself of diversity and inclusion might be in jeopardy. And maybe we will not be able to use these terms anymore. So thanks to our colleagues from We the Curious in Europe, and we are curious to what they have to say. Thaddeus, I hand it over to you. Can you please introduce our panelists from your institution? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Walter, and thank you everybody for joining us today or this evening if you're overseas like Samantha and I are. I just started volunteering at We the Curious this summer, and I started working there about a month ago, and I was immediately impressed by how many efforts I was seeing from the museum and how serious and deep its commitment was to DEI initiatives, to community involvement, to the general concept of well-being and creating a positive workplace culture. And that included meeting Samantha on one of my first visits to the Science Center here, even just having her introduce herself as a belonging manager. And I immediately wanted to know what that meant because it wasn't something I had encountered in a museum before, and we got into a conversation about that. And so when we hit on the topic of this kind of success stories that let institutions talk about what they've been able to do in the realm of DEI, I asked Samantha if she would be willing to come and speak with us, and thankfully she said yes. I will now hand it over to you, Samantha.
Oh, thank you, Thaddeus, and Museum Expert as well for inviting me today to be part of this conversation. And hello, everyone. So my name's Samantha Jones, she, her. I'm in my late 30s and I have bob dark hair and I'm wearing glasses. I'm joining you today from at home in Wales in the UK. And I'm going to talk a bit about how I relate to today's topic as belonging manager at We the Curious. So We the Curious is a science centre and educational charity through science and art in Bristol in England. My background is in community arts, volunteer management and people management, and I've experience in governance, policy, HR, but specific to this role and in this space as well, creating progression pathways and space for people from volunteering on the ground to board level through to employment. I'm a detailed person. I like policy and processes which can be helpful for finding gaps. And I'm also very motivated by creating spaces for connection. And I have a core belief in the strength in collaboration, but also what we can learn from each other. As belonging manager, my role has an internal inclusion focus, and I sit within the people team. So in other organisations, it's maybe known as HR. And the overall aim of our belonging project is to build a greater sense of belonging for everyone at We the Curious. We're looking at growing a workforce that serves the community of Bristol that we serve, that represents the community of Bristol that we serve. And when everyone feels and is shown that an organisation cares for them and recognises who they are, making adjustments for their individual circumstances and background, this is true inclusion and this benefits everyone. So I'm really looking forward to talking with you about this today and hearing from the other speakers too. Thaddeus, is this the point where you want me to talk a bit more about initiatives that we've made at We the Curious? Yeah. Okay.
That would be great.
Thank you. So if we some of the things we've done at We the Curious to make us more human centric for our people. I suppose the key thing is that we recognise a space becomes a place once people are added. So creating a place and work culture where people can be themselves is key here. And We the Curious is a workplace that supports individuals to flourish to what they are good at and encourages us to live We the Curious's values. So exploring and marvelling at the world that we find ourselves in. So I think simply when we feel we can be ourselves and free to explore and make mistakes, we do our best work. And that's really important at We the Curious. We also value lived experience and diversity of thought. And we currently have belonging champions. We have race equity and disability champions. And we've really taken an all-together approach here where allies are welcome as belonging champions, as well as those with personal lived experience in these areas. And our belonging champions are organising activities, encouraging open communication, addressing any concerns, and all of this is contributing to a workplace of where there's shared understanding and people that thrive both personally and professionally. Our belonging champions also role modelling inclusive behaviour and this open approach to conversation. Questioning creates a space where people can have conversation, and of course it's conversation which is where we learn and we can move forward. They celebrate a variety of cultural events such as sharing lunches at Eid, and also come together to make collective recommendations. For example, they coordinate a bi-monthly belonging networks. So we have our Black, Brown and Asian belonging network, and we also have disability belonging network. And these are spaces for our people to build communities at work. Within these spaces, there are no minutes, they're not recorded, they happen within our people's paid work time. And there can be, of course, with consent to share where there are key things that can be recommended, and then we can make changes. We do have plans as well to launch LGBTQ+ and the working class belonging network next year as well. But all of this contributes to our culture of feedback. And we've also created multiple feedback groups for our staff to share. We have our annual staff survey, which is a space where everyone is encouraged to complete an anonymous route to comment and give feedback on all areas of our work. We also have a monthly pulse survey, which is a check-in to gauge how our teams are doing. And we have a speak up policy, which is, again, an anonymous feedback route. And it's really important to us to listen and respond and also acknowledge where there is work to do. Thinking more on sort of HR and policy, we have flexible working and hybrid options for our teams. So where possible, our staff have the options to work from home or from the office and work their hours in a way that acknowledges any of the commitments that they have. And in terms of public holidays, there's a change we've made recently, although we've been doing this for a long time, but sometimes the grey areas sort of need a bit of clarification. But we've given permission for our staff to take public holidays in a way that suits them. So in the UK, the government allocates holidays to mark events such as Christmas and Easter, and typically these are Christian holidays. So to ensure this time can be taken equitably, we permit our people to use this public holiday entitlement at times that suit them rather than the allocated government expectation. I want to talk a little bit around intentional pathways as well. So we've created work experience opportunities at We the Curious with partners who are working with young people with areas of lived experience that are currently underrepresented at We the Curious. And we've implemented secondments for all internal colleagues as well. Volunteers are encouraged to apply for roles and supported through the application process. One thing we recognise is that external candidates perhaps don't have the network that internal applicants would have. So we're making space for supporting by asking people to reach out and having those conversations and giving support with application. We have reimagined our recruitment process, so done what we can to take away any unconscious bias. So the process is anonymised, but also for all shortlisted candidates, we provide questions in advance of interview, and we encourage all our candidates to bring notes, and that's explicitly said in their invitation to interview. We also adhere to positive action, where there is equal scoring of candidates at interview. The candidate with the lived experience and represented at We the Curious will be given the role. In terms of success stories, perhaps if there's time, Thaddeus, I can share a little bit around people within the organisation who have come through pathways. Wanted to talk about a volunteer we have called Hemlata. Hemlata was a hidden health leader, so she created an exhibition with us, and she's also a race equity champion, so has contributed to our work to become an anti-racist organisation. But Hemlata talks about how We the Curious enables a sense of self, and how she feels she can be herself, and knowing what safety feels like made her feel she was ready to apply to be involved with us here. We've also had previous volunteers return to us as trustees, and many employees leave and return, and people stay for a long time. I have some quotes here I wanted to share about feedback from these successes. So somebody said, I came back to We the Curious because of what you were doing and the culture of belonging here, and I wanted you to know I feel welcome and safe. Another colleague, the people here make We the Curious. It's like a family. And another colleague, it's been one of those weeks when work is hectic and home life goes a little awry too, including an overexcited 7-year-old who couldn't wait for break the rule day at school today, so woke up at 3, 4, 5 a.m. So to be able to take a breath and move at my own pace, working from home and fully trusted by We the Curious is wonderful. Shout out to all the employed parents managing the juggle. But that's just a taste of who we are and the culture here. I know we've got lots more people to speak to, so I'll sort of finish that for now.
Thank you, Samantha. I really appreciate that. Just one quick question before we pass it on to our next speaker. When it came to some of the initiatives, like just for example, having the social organizations that could meet during their working hours, was there any challenge that came from leadership in order to enact that? And if so, how was that dealt with?
Okay, thank you, Thaddeus. That's a really great question. One of the main things, perhaps not a challenge necessarily from leadership in terms of the work happening, because the belonging work is certainly valued at We the Curious, and there is investment all the way through the organisations. There's buy-in at all levels, but we have operational challenges. We run a venue, and in order to ensure everyone can attend any belonging activity equitably has meant some changes. For example, we have staff who are rotated, and we have staff who have more autonomy over their diaries. Perhaps they work in the office or they work from home. But for our staff who are rotated and work shifts or work on the floor, they need to give a bit more notice in advance if they would like to attend. So one thing we've had to do is start scheduling belonging activity in advance. Before it was more of a drop-in, but now in order for everyone to attend actively, it has meant resourcing when our rotated staff want to attend, so that can be backup staff as well. And also, so that has meant we've sort of looked at budgets and looked at capacity across the board.
Great, thanks. I think that that combination of needing to plan ahead, but also just that bit about the leadership team being supportive is really so clutch, really making that a priority and having that buy-in from everyone. All right, thank you so much, Samantha. Back to you, Walter.
Thank you so much. And we have more questions coming up, I'm guessing. And I just want to remind, and I forgot to say that in the beginning, to all the participants, if you have questions to any of the speakers, panelists, please put them in the chat box and we will answer them at the end. We have time foreseen for that. So if you have questions, put them in the chat. So we're going to Chabot now, and Eric Avel, another museum expert team member, will introduce the panelists from there.
Great, thanks so much, Walter. And Samantha, thank you very much for your insightful thoughts. And a lot of those resonate, I think, with the Chabot story as well. So my name's Eric Havel. I'm with the Chabot Space and Science Center and with Museum Expert. So Walter brought me in as one of the founding leaders of the group about 4 years ago during COVID. And as you know, as you can see, I'm sitting right next to Rasheda, and in a room adjacent to Lilith are two representatives from Chabot. And just a little backstory, and then I'd like to introduce Rasheda and Lilith as well. So I worked at Chabot for 22 years, starting in 1998 up until 2020, and then COVID hit, and about 2/3 of us lost our full-time jobs at Chabot. So it was really hard. It was really difficult for me personally. I think it was difficult for all of us that time. But it did sort of launched a lot of soul searching, I think, on all of our parts, both personally and institutionally. You know, Chabot used the opportunity to really redevelop itself, to actually do a lot of remodeling. And DEIA has become a really big focus for the institution. So I'm excited to, and I'm actually back at Chabot on a very small role, part-time role, working with students and teachers and doing a lot of professional development in my full-time life. But just framing it with the EIA for Chabot, you know, there's been a lot of great changes to the center, which I think Rasheda and Lilith can talk about. There's a whole arc of programs that the DEIA committee has been spearheading, things like staff hangouts, which are really similar to the belonging events that Samantha shared. There's one tonight. It's a movie night, and it's an optional opt-in evening event. Lilith is going to share an event that's happening tomorrow night, I think, or this weekend. That's part of the DEIA initiative. And then Rasheda has a lot to share around the history, some of the highlights for her, you know, what she really resonates with her, and maybe some of the challenges for the organizations and aspirations as well. So with that, I'd like to center Rasheda and introduce her. So I'm going to move you'll hear my voice, but you'll see her. Or you can see us both, I guess.
Yeah.
So Rasheda Figgs, she's the event coordinator at the Chabot Space and Science Center, and she's the co-manager of the DEIA committee at Chabot, which, what is it, about 6 or 7 staff?
Yeah, I think we have 7 now. So we try to stay between 7 and 10, I believe. So no more than 10, no less than 7. Pretty interesting group of people that, you know, we work with. So we try to grab someone from every department, and that way we get feedback from all aspects of the museum and where there's things needed, or if someone has anything to say, because every department is affected differently from just the day-to-day operations. Sorry. So I'm Rasheda Figgs. Hi. Just introduce myself. I am the event coordinator here at Chabot Space and Science Center. I'm an Oakland native where Chabot sits. I've visited Chabot Space and Science Center in the many different locations that it has been in over my lifespan. So, you know, I'm just very familiar with the area, the people, the culture of the community, you know, the communities we want to serve, the people we want to have visit the center. I originally started working at Chabot almost 2 years ago. It's been about 1 year and 11 months. So, you know, but just learning more about the actual museum itself and bringing my own ideas and expertise to DEIA has been very interesting, very fun. but also just wanting to make sure that every voice is heard and every person is can experience, you know, science or space or get their questions answered and not feel, you know, uncomfortable, not feel like it's not for them, maybe feel like, you know, they aren't, you know, this isn't the demographic for them, when in reality it's for everybody. So part of what we are trying to do here in DEIA, we are still very new. So I'm here more so really trying to learn what other museums are doing, what other museums have tried, what has failed, where, you know, what may not work for one group may work for another group. But we are still really diving into who we are and what our culture is. Like Eric was saying, during COVID, it kind of really wrecked a lot of, you know, science museums and science museums across the globe. So, in any type of museum, you know, across the globe. So a lot of people were really affected by that. And so now in that phase of rebuilding, we're only 4 years out of COVID. Really 2 years back in operations, like fully. So we're still trying to get our footing when it comes to DEIA and what we need to do, who we need to serve, where are we lacking. A lot of, you know, our ADA needs, or do we have doors that open for people who maybe, you know, are in wheelchairs and need help? Do we have elevators and lifts everywhere that it needs to be? What communities are we not serving? You know, some of the issues right now that we are trying to overcome is, you know, we sit at the very top of a hill. It's not a lot of public transportation here. It's not a lot of ways for our community to come and actually get to our museum. So, you know, working with the city of Oakland and working with public transportation is something that we are still very much committed into trying to get a city bus that comes, you know, stops close enough to get people to come to the museum. So really expanding how we are reaching our community and how we can serve our community best is what we are really trying and striving to do right now. I want to have Lilith come on. She also works with me on our DEIA committee, and she has a lot of information on how we are doing public programs to kind of make some of that happen as well. So we're introducing a lot of new programming for different people in the community, and she's our public programs person. So I want to allow her to speak at this time.
Thank you so much, Rasheda. Hi, everyone. My name is Lilith. My pronouns are she, they, and I've been at Chabot for about 2 years as well, just a little over 2 years. I started actually at the front desk, and I've been in public programs for about a year now, and I am now our lead public programs developer. Yeah, and I've kind of had the honor to be a part of launching this series of cultural events at Chabot. When I got into the programs department, Chabot was still sort of in this era of science only. And of course, like we do want to reach our community, but we weren't making a lot of steps towards that in our programming. And so it's been really rewarding and really great to get to work with some incredible community partners to launch programming like our Afrofuturism event we now do every year. I'm planning that for February. Pride especially, I have some like cute success stories. Hispanic Heritage Month event, we just had a Dia de los Muertos floor experience, as well as a ofrenda that was up in the center for about a month, which was really great to see. And yeah, sort of speaking to what Rasheda had mentioned about Oakland, it is such a wonderfully diverse community that we're in here in Oakland and in the Bay Area in general. And I just feel really grateful to get to be a part of this sort of positive change that's happening, where we're able to open our doors a little bit more and make sure that we're celebrating that diversity in our community. I think like something that's important to me is that we're not just a space and science center, but we're also a community center, and we're a part of Oakland and Oakland is a part of us. And we have this space, this physical space where we're able to sort of say, hey, come in, let's have a community gathering. Let's get to know your neighbors. Let's do some mutual aid. Like, how can we fundraise? How can we use public programs as a means for positive change? So that's been really awesome. Like Eric mentioned, on Friday night, tomorrow night, we have our Science is a Drag 21 Plus event. I'm super excited for that. We'll be bringing in local drag icon Vera and a couple of other performers. And yeah, it's just sort of this new era of programming for Chabot, which has been wonderful to work on. So.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Rasheda and Lilith, for sharing your experiences and some of your aspirations and hopes as sort of a newly established committee. Some other highlights for me and I just was curious what you each think about this, but I know that Chabot has made some real strides towards salary banding, and to really look at levels of like educators. So now we have like 3 science instructor levels, 1, 2, and 3, and they're banded. And it's very transparent on the website about what's the bracket of pay you can expect. And so I think that's a really positive change, However, I imagine there's still some work to be done and some challenges. So any thoughts on, your feelings about, onboarding at Chabot, about roles and responsibilities and equity in terms of salary, pay, responsibility? And then, yeah, or just in general, what excites you? Like the Pride event tomorrow sounds amazing. Lilith and I partnered on an Earth Day event last year, and Rasheda and I both grew up in Oakland, so I think we both feel this real connection. I started going to Chabot when I was like 6 years old or something crazy. So it's there's some real roots here. So yeah, just some thoughts, and we have maybe about just like a minute each, and then I want to honor Andrea, our final speaker.
I would just say, just on the pay bands and trying to kind of create this salary. That was a challenge for us in DEIA. But with challenges, a lot of positive things come from that. We are definitely, it's something that is ongoing. We're still working on it. We have absolutely not perfected that at all. But just kind of taking ideas from different institutions that we've seen before, making sure that we have clear descriptions of what is expected of people coming in, how will people be trained. There wasn't a formal training method as people got onboarded or hiring, and that's one thing that we are trying to make it clear across the board, regardless to what department you're in. There are certain things that you do. Everyone should come in with the expectation of having those trainings within the first 2 weeks of them coming in. And we're still working on that, but we do have some of our main things, DEIA being one of them, making sure that everyone understands and knows that they will be coming in and working with a large number of people, a very diverse group of people here that we work with, and how to handle those challenges, how to talk that out, what managers to go to. And so we have that process. And then picking the pay bands, of course, is not based on, who you are, but what you're coming in with, and the knowledge and the expertise that you're coming in with, and making sure that we meet you where you are. So
great.
Yeah, I'd say I came into the DEA panel a little bit after Rasheda, and so I was here for sort of the tail end of this conversation. But yeah, we talked a lot about pay transparency. We looked at a lot of different sort of matrices for pay bands at different institutions to find one that would work really well as sort of a template for ours. I know there were some places in the org chart where sort of within certain departments you hit a ceiling, and then there was no clear pathway on how you would progress from there. And so something that we spent a lot of time on was making sure that there was equitable upward mobility, regardless of what department you're in, you're able to move across, which is really great. We talked a lot about language as well. We spent some time going over the new job descriptions and competencies, and we spent a lot of time looking through and making sure that the language was very clear, that there was nothing in there that could be, for lack of a better word, like weaponized. And there are some things that I learned through this process, like things like words like flexibility. We would say, okay, flexibility within reason, because what does it look like if you know, for example, to give like Samantha's example, if you're a working parent and you need to leave early to pick up your kid after school, do we say, oh, you're not being flexible because you can't come in during that time? So being really specific about the language that we use, because language has power, and we want to make sure that everything is as sort of equitable as it can be. So it's a really like rewarding process to be a part of.
Thank you so much for this contribution from Chabot. I'm trying to respect the timing for everyone and giving the chance to everybody to have their say. So I'm going to move now to Andrea Harp, who is working at the Michigan Science Center. Andrea has a master's in public administration and has been a long time leader in the nonprofit sector, focusing on strategies and community work. And she now is chief of staff at the Michigan Science Center, and also director for culture and community, which is quite an interesting mix, I feel, of competencies, and it shows how the Science Center tries to combine the work inside and building community inside to serve the community outside. So I'm sure she's going to talk a little bit about that. And I remind you, I already saw quite some important questions coming up in the chat. So please don't hesitate, put your questions in the chat. We have foreseen enough time to answer them, I hope so. So Andrea, take it away.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Walter. Thank you to Museum Expert for inviting me to participate, and just really appreciate all of the work that the panelists have shared that is ongoing in their institutions. So much of that resonates, and I'm going to try to not repeat things that I've already heard in hopes of addressing some things that folks have not heard. So won't repeat much about my background, but it is important to know that I do carry 2 titles, which very much work in concert with each other, but are also very different and specific roles, which I'll get into in a minute. And it definitely pairs well with kind of where we're going with this conversation. But I just, we'll just start by saying I am speaking through the lens of a Black woman. I'm married with 1 child. I do hold a master's degree, as Walter mentioned. So I think those things are important for context. I spent the majority of my career in nonprofit, and pivoting to a nonprofit museum space was really different for me, but has been such an exciting opportunity to learn and grow in this space. And so I've been with the Science Center here in Detroit, Michigan for almost 6 years, and it's been such an incredible journey. So I, in the interest of time, just want to stick right with my notes here and try to tackle a few things that we have done here. When I started at the Science Center, I started in the role of a community partnership manager that was very specific to our STEMinista program, which I won't get a lot into that. But again, just the context there is that when I started, it started at, mid-management level, and could already just see some areas that the Science Center here in Detroit was pretty challenged in, and some aspirations for the work that I could do in that program. And hopefully at some point in the organization, we're very much a part of this journey. And so at some point along the way, I was promoted to Director of Culture and Community. And even in that process unfolding was one that I think is pretty unique. I got to partner with our CEO to actually write my job description, which I thought was, mostly unheard of, but it really speaks to his belief in people and belief in really tapping into and activating what people bring to the table. And so some of the first work that was really important for us to do was really around dismantling silos. And so really ridding ourselves of the notion that my work as an individual and my decisions at work don't affect other people, when in fact that is very much not the truth. And so for us, that looked like really spending a lot of time and intention around flattening our structure and really creating space for intention around making it easier for teams to collaborate and to contribute to our mission and vision at large. That's not an easy task. That's not something that I say lightly or say, you know, yep, thumbs up, we're all good. Even though we've had this structure in place, it takes quite a bit of work to ensure that many voices are at the table as we're making decisions. A part of that flattening our structure really meant we had to do some very intentional work about helping people to understand the nature of reporting relationships and really backing up what we were saying. And so if we are saying that anybody can talk to anyone at any time about anything, that's a pretty broad statement, right? We all as professionals have work to do and you know, productivity, right, around making our science centers go, our museums go. And so really being intentional around talking about what that meant with our staff, coaching people around when are the appropriate times to check in with your direct supervisor versus, hey, you've got something that you want to share with the CEO. And so really being purposeful around making sure that we are backing up what we said, which was, hey, we are not doing away with reporting relationships, but trying to create more space where more people could contribute. One of the other things that we've been really intentional about, as well as many of the other panelists have mentioned, is creating space for more community building amongst each other. Again, with the silos that existed here for a long time, it was also very apparent that people really didn't know each other. People didn't know you know, the perspectives and the backgrounds that people are coming to the table with. And I think that you know, while there's a space for, you know, us to operate as professionals, we don't leave our personal lives at the door. And I think it's really important to remember that. And so we worked really hard to create a space where we were cultivating joy and opportunities where playful learning could occur during our work. And so what does that look like in practice? When I show up to a meeting, and this really goes for anybody who might be facilitating a meeting, if I'm feeling like, you know, the energy is low, or people are, you know, dissatisfied or whatever the case may be, just the energy is off. We will spend some time doing some really fun activities to get people loosened up, to get people feeling a little bit more vulnerable and ready to work in a way that feels good to all of us. And so in addition to, you know, creating that space, we had to institute a lot more opportunities for those same sorts of community building activities that many of my colleagues have already shared. So I won't get too much into that. But the same concepts are true. And I think that, you know, speaks to the fact that many of us have already talked a lot about that. One of the other things that we've been really intentional about doing also is hosting listening sessions. And so that's occurred in a few different ways. Our CEO has really tried to create space for people to come directly to him. But I also, as the chief of staff and director of culture and community, host one-to-one listening sessions and small group sessions. And so at any point when we're feeling a shift in the organization, or we know a big decision is getting ready to be made, we take time to stop before we've approved that decision and invite staff from all levels, regardless of title, department, scope of work, to come and share their opinions. And that has been really fruitful in just us as a leadership team, specifically executive leadership, hearing directly from our teams on what they are seeing, feeling, and how this decision that we could be making may affect them. I'll also say that in our all staff meetings, Something else that we've instituted is the hot seat conversations. And so those typically take place with our CEO and or combination of myself and other leaders on our executive leadership team. And so we invite staff members to anonymously submit questions that they can ask us about anything within the organization. And it's called the hot seat because sometimes it may be uncomfortable to talk about these things. We have no prep, no way really of knowing what kinds of questions are going to come up. But I think that strategy has been really fruitful, again, in creating another avenue for us to hear what people are thinking, feeling, and ensuring that they feel like they have a voice, which has really been critical in our strategy. I'll just also mention quickly that a part of our strategy as well has been to adopt non-traditional approaches to how we get work done. Many of our colleagues have talked about the various lenses and backgrounds that we all come from, our lived experience, our day-to-days look very different. I am a working mother who at 3 o'clock, if I'm not in the pickup line, my daughter is going to be very upset with me. So that requires me to have a different schedule than other people. But I'm also speaking right from a place of privilege where I'm an executive on our team and I don't work a set schedule. So, but we have tried to adopt that same principle in many avenues for the rest of our staff. And so, and try to adopt policy around that as well. A couple of things I'll mention before I wrap up my comments here. One of the other things we have been, I think, again, on a journey for is really building community with our city. It was really important for me in the role of Director of Culture and Community, especially, is to really build a space where our community felt like this was their science center and that they could come here and do all kinds of cool and creative things alongside of us, that we could learn from the work that they were doing in the community, even if it didn't necessarily align with all of the things that we are doing here. Obviously, we hope to find synergy and connection around work that is happening, but we want our space, if we are calling ourselves a STEM hub, if you will, which we do, we want to create space where community can come in and promote the things that are part of our values. And so we found some innovative ways to do that, and I'll just give a couple of really quick examples here. There's an organization called Black Tech Saturdays in the city of Detroit. They are a nonprofit that focuses on digital equity for the city of Detroit, focusing on specifically Black and Brown communities. And I had been in discussions with them for about a year of ways that we could partner and share space with them. And they were able to host their first inaugural digital empowerment summit right here because they saw the Science Center as sort of a spark for helping to close the gap on some of the equity issues they were seeing in the digital literacy space. And we had over 3,000 people here that day. And so people getting to see two really notable organizations in the community collaborating around something like that was really powerful. The last thing I'll mention here is that along this journey, it has been really important for us to note that there's no cookie cutter strategy. There's no one size fits all. This is a journey that has required us to call other organizations, talk to other people, check in on a variety of resources. And the last thing I'll just mention here is just that along the journey, there's going to be some missteps, and we have been intentional about trying to be honest about that and to course correct when needed. So.
Thank you, Andrea. Thank you. And I have a question, of course, follow up on what you say. First of all, having 3,000 people coming to the event looks like a great success. But my question is about how do you deal with ideas that come up within your staff that are actually not directly in line with what the mission and the vision of the institution is? You create so many channels for people to express themselves, to go into conversation, whether directly or anonymously or something. It might be that something comes up that the people are really strongly believe and that you think that's not something we can do or we cannot do now. How do you deal with that?
Yeah, I would say that we have tried to be intentional about being direct and transparent. So for us, it's been communication, right? If we have an open door around, hey, we want your ideas, we also have to give that feedback around saying, yes, we welcome your ideas, but we also know that we have to execute on all of these things, capacity, budget. And so that means for us saying, while we welcome your ideas, you should know that we may or may not be able to execute everything that's been brought to the table. And so I think that that honesty and that transparency around and really looking at people and saying it to them in the most compassionate and empathetic ways possible. We cannot do everything, nor do we necessarily want to, but we want to make sure people are heard. So hopefully that answers your question.
Thank you. Yeah, sure. So thank you all the panelists so far. I'm going to turn it over to Colleen now. Colleen Carter is one of the instrumental people here in museumexpert.org to make this all happen. And she has been monitoring the chat, and I've seen some questions, but Colleen, you are there to distillate that and come up with what did our audience want to know today.
Sure. We had a couple of great questions come in, and I'm going to start just right at the beginning and kind of work my way down as time permits. So Samantha, one of our attendees, not our panelist, asked in the chat if anybody in this group has any kind of institutional framework around DEAI ideas and initiatives. Just wanting to know if there's an approval process as these ideas come up. I think Andrea kind of hinted on this a little bit, but maybe Chabot, Rasheda and Lilith, or Samantha, maybe you have thoughts on that.
May I speak, Colleen?
Absolutely, go ahead.
So we've been looking at Esme Fairborn, who's they're a fund, a trust in the UK, and they support. They've created the Race Report, which supports transparency on diversity of ethnicity within organisations. It's designed to be a catalyst for action to improve diversity, equity and inclusion in the charity sector, and they have a framework that can be used to question through your organisation as you go into self-assess, and then it's up to organisations whether they post that information online as well to encourage that transparency. And then there's also the DAISY survey, which we're looking at doing next year, which is an EDI survey that gives detailed insight into the demographic profile of our people as well. So we'll be looking at doing that, and that really helps us question ourselves and assess where we're at.
I was gonna say I kind of lost my train of thought, but with our DEIA panel, so we do have an approval process. We do go through different channels. So, you know, it starts in DEIA, whatever the idea is, we kind of grab that idea, we talk about it, approve it, and then it goes to our board approves, you know. So there's framework around it. And I think for our committee, one of the very first things that we did when we kind of started the committee was to create a kind of a template that basically holds us accountable, and we have our own rules that we have to go through and that we all have to agree to, and we made that up ourselves. And we sat down, you know, sat at the round table and said, what are we gonna do? What are we gonna, you know, why are we here? Who are we serving? What do we want to do? What do we want to accomplish? We wrote down our own commitment statement for ourselves, and, you know, how big of the issue, whatever the issue is it's an HR issue, it's a DEIA committee issue, and then we go from there. So we prioritize things, severity, and, you know, we go to take it to the panel, or if we need to take it up to HR, or, you know, take it to any other departments or include anyone else. But we try to keep everything within the panel if we can.
Makes sense. Andrea, is there anything you wanted to cherry on top with? I know you said so much on this topic in your 10 minutes, but if you have anything you wanted to really highlight, I just want to give you an opportunity.
Yeah, I think it's really important to just ensure, like many of the other panelists have stated, is that there has to be a through line to the people at the top of your organization. If you are not intentional about connections to your executive leadership, your board, any other stakeholders that need to be involved in these decisions, or that could put a halt to those decisions, then you could create problems, within that process. And so that is one of the reasons why the role that I have is in the C-suite, so that we have a direct line to our president and CEO around these issues that arise.
Thank you so much, everybody. And I'm going to jump into a question Tammy had that I actually have myself. So Tammy wanted to know, in consideration of cultivating safe workspaces for colleagues, have you ever had to navigate inappropriate language or comments in a group meeting? I think we all know that we've all been in situations where someone has maybe said something, whether maliciously or not. Sometimes it's well-intentioned, but sometimes it is direct and purposeful. And how do you navigate those comments in the moment in those group settings? How about we'll just do the same round. We'll start with Samantha and go to Chabot and come back to Andrea. So Samantha.
It's such a great question. I think certainly it's the conversation we have at We the Curious about allyship. I think first it's calling out the person. We all have a duty of care to each other, and if we have if we feel confident to say that is outdated language, that's outdated. We've also implemented EDP's Race Ahead training and committed to all employees going on this, so that covers allyship and how to be an active bystander and challenge discrimination. And these principles of allyship, they can be applied to any protected characteristic, race, sexuality, gender, but we do encourage our people to call out inappropriate behaviour. And for those who are not comfortable in the moment, it can be reported anonymously and would then be discussed with the individuals. So we've got a policy on code of conduct, but also our speak up, so our whistleblowing policy that can be used too.
Chabot.
I would say with that, calling out is definitely something that, you want to make sure that person knows in that moment that was not okay. It can also be sidebarred. It can also be brought, to their attention a little bit later. Reporting how you feel. I think a lot of my coworkers, which I really appreciate and love most of them for, is that we are a very outspoken group. And so if someone feels uncomfortable in that moment, or if something was said that, was inappropriate, it will definitely be addressed. And, I think with us, the first thing for the way we handle it is always education. So sometimes, like you were saying, within that question, is that things could be said and you don't know you're being offensive. Also, things can be said and it was intentional and it was malicious, So one, we need to find out which one that was. Was it malicious? What was the intent? Was it on purpose? And then from that, there's disciplinary actions that follow that initial statement. So once we have addressed the issue, brought education to the issue, educated them on why what they said was wrong, or what, how it made people feel. And then if it was intentional or malicious, there are disciplinary actions that we have set up and within the DEAI committee to, address those issues.
I'll just add that especially in our larger group meetings, I typically employ at the beginning of meetings the strategy around everybody building a list of community norms of how we want to operate and behave in a meeting. And so I take time to ask everybody, what are going to be the community norms that we operate in this meeting with, and it's usually kind of a generic set of things that people come up with, and then I'll go back and say, is there anything that anyone in the room wants to lift up? And so maybe it's appropriate language, or no idea is a stupid idea, or whatever the case may be. That has really helped people to, number one, train themselves to, when you come in here, you operate in a certain way. We're going to be respectful. We're going to create space for other people, including and up to not. It doesn't even have to be in inappropriate language. Sometimes people, the loudest people in the room, take up the most space, and that's not always the most appropriate behavior in a meeting. So we're also really intentional around saying one of our community norms, whether someone mentions it or not, is sharing space with others. And so I think starting from a place of, let's establish how we want to behave with each other and work with each other in the meeting or in a conversation is a really good place to just set that foundation.
I think we all acknowledge as museum people that we want our museums to reflect our communities and to reflect when our staff and in our events and everything that we do. But Lauren had an excellent question around, we host sometimes these events with a cultural intention, right? To bring in and make certain, parts of our communities feel more welcome. But we have to find a way to tie our missions into those events. So the question was really specifically around science, but how do you tie your mission into these cultural events that you're hoping to serve a larger demographic and a larger representation of your community? So I'm going to go in reverse, and we're going to start with Andrea and work our way back.
Yeah, I'll keep my comment really short. I think that it's important to just know that for us, everything is not going to feel super aligned for everyone all the time. And so we try to function like that, knowing that some things may feel more like this is an opportunity for us just to build community. And then other moments it's sharing space. And then some moments it's, hey, this is our moment to really share what we do. But I will say we are always intentional about trying to build science and STEM education programming into anything that we do, whether it's just having a table with a demo for our guests that are coming in for a private event, or asking, hey, how can we integrate the public programs that we offer into this event? So just being intentional about having those conversations with people and just letting them know this is a part of our business model, and our strategy is we're going to bring what we do to what you do, because that's what makes this an opportunity.
Lily, do you have something, or you want me to go?
Yeah, I can definitely speak to this one. Yeah, I think to sort of echo what Andrea said here, there are moments where we as Chabot and that we as the public programs team say, okay, this is a great sort of intersection between what we do here, our space and science education, and this particular cultural holiday, Afrofuturism, is one that's a really great one where we can operate at that intersection. And there are other times where it's tied to our mission because our mission involves making sure that STEM education is accessible to everyone. And so even if the event isn't specifically science focused or specifically space focused, it is important to us as an institution to make sure that our community feels welcome, that our community knows that STEM education is for more than just older white men. And so regardless of how on the nose that connection is, it still ties back to our mission.
And Samantha, did you have anything you'd like to contribute? I know we're getting close to time, but wanted to give you an opportunity.
Thank you. I'll be quick. I think for us, one of our key values is around including everyone, and that can all add in that historically STEM and science has created barriers to stop people being involved, to stop everyone being involved in science. And I think it's really important to recognize that we don't always have the answers, and working with the trusted people in communities and using our organizational privilege to platform voices and to make space for others who could lead. That could be through programming for our visitors or internal projects as well. But yeah, but other than that, not much more to add from the great comments from the speakers.
Fantastic. Thanks so much. And I'm going to turn this back over to Walter. We're going to wrap up. I know we're already 1 minute over, but thank you again to all of our panelists today for their amazing thoughts and contributions. And Walter, I'll hand it back to you.
Thanks, Colleen. Yeah, I know we have spoken about a lot of things and a lot of questions came up, and we are far from having covered the whole topic, of course. So I just want to know and let know everybody that this is certainly not the last conversation that we will have about that. And we are exploring other formats as well in the future to make these conversations more in depth and involve more people and get to some kind of recommendations about actionable things that people in museums can do on this issue. So stay tuned for that. I just want to mention also that in January, we will have a next webinar that will tackle a total different area, or maybe not totally, which is what are the changes in art museums these days after COVID, etc., which is something that we are looking forward to as well. So let me echo Colleen's thanks to the panelists. We were really fortunate to have you and the diversity of perspectives. And let me tell also the museum expert team members, Tadeusz in the UK and Eric in Chabot, and Colleen behind the scenes and synthesizing the questions. You all did great work, and we're so fortunate to have a team of volunteers that can make this happen. And if you want to do that with us, we're still open to have other people joining our team in the future. So thank you all, and I hope to see you soon in January. Thank you.